Hit record. All right, people, I sure appreciate you having lunch with me today. My name is Kim Hegwood. I'm with Hegwood Law Group. Today, we're going to do kind of a short presentation on what we call Medicaid 101, preserving dignity and preserving assets. We have a lot of clients that, can't afford long-term care, and they honestly, a bunch of them don't think they were going to live long enough to need it or that they would ever need it. And so we spend enormous amounts of time talking to clients about the fact that everyone should be planning for long-term care, no matter what. And so we're going to kind of walk you through some things. So briefly, we're going to talk about Medicaid myths. There's a lot of those out there. Medicaid facts, really want you to get some good information. We're going to talk about the 2005, the DRA information, the Deficit Reduction Act, because that kicked in a lot of the things that we have to do now. We're going to talk about penalty periods. We're going to talk about income. We're going to talk about countable and non-countable assets. And we're going to talk about the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program, because that's going to be really important for people to get some good information on if Medicaid is going to be the payer of your long-term care. And what most people don't realize is that Medicaid pays about 83% of everyone's long-term care at the moment. So it's paying a lot. All right, so let's kind of get to the Medicaid myths, because I think a lot of people are going to be very familiar with these. So the first one is you have to be broke to qualify. That couldn't be further from the truth. So we have a lot of clients that have some money. Some have a little bit more money, depending on if you're married or single, depends on, a lot of factors that are involved in determining, Medicaid eligibility, but you don't have to spend down to nothing to qualify. Other people say, my income is too high. Luckily, we have a plan for that. And so as long as your income is not high enough to pay the entire cost of the nursing home care, then there is a plan in place that we can put to help take care of that, to pay the difference if it's needed. Here's a good one. It's a good idea to transfer assets to children to qualify. I tell everybody, Social Security knows everything you do. They knows everything you have. Everything is attached to your Social Security number. Their goal is to catch you in a lie. Easiest way to disqualify you. So you want to be very careful. We tell clients, do not transfer at all to children, especially directly. It's never a good plan, because if you need the money back, they may not have it. And so we have better plans of, if we need to transfer, if we need to do things, you always want to get it done by a good elder law attorney, because then you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have a problem down the road. We have a lot of people that think they have to get divorced to qualify. With married people, we can protect almost all of their assets. So getting divorced is not necessarily an option that you need to have. You should have a pre or post-nuptial agreement. Well, let me tell you, kids, neither one of them work. For Medicaid, everything is countable for Medicaid. So having the prenup or the postnup won't help you for Medicaid. I do highly recommend, though. So if you're getting second marriages, things like that, I highly recommend that you do that anyway. And separate property doesn't count. Doesn't matter. Separate, community, doesn't matter. Medicaid, if you're married, takes everything into consideration. If you're single, it takes everything into consideration. So Medicaid will take your house. Medicaid doesn't want your house. They want to be reimbursed. So the goal is to, how do we go about either doing that or avoid doing that, which most people really want to avoid. Medicaid can't come take your house. That's never an issue. What Medicaid does do is come in as a creditor in probate. So we want to make sure that we avoid that at all possibilities, so that way we don't have to worry about paying Medicaid back. So now we're going to kind of venture over a little bit and talk about some Medicaid facts. And guys, as I'm going through this, don't hesitate to write down anything you want to know, jot down your questions, because I don't want you to forget them, because I want to make sure that you have really good use of your time here today. So we want to make sure we do that. So there are 5 tests for Medicaid. The nursing home has to accept Medicaid. You have to be in a Medicaid, what we call a Medicaid bed. A lot of nursing homes in the area will have private pay, and they'll allocate, 10% of their beds, for Medicaid. I tell every client, no one except the business manager knows which those beds are. It's not rooms 1 through 10, so that everybody knows. It doesn't work that way. You're intermingled throughout the nursing home. And if you're going to have to be on Medicaid, you want to be in a facility that takes both, because your level of care is going to be higher. And so that's going to be kind of a, way we talk to clients about how you pick and choose where you may want to be able to go. You have to be in that bed. It's that designated bed. And so they have to be in some nursing homes who have those designated beds, they may not have one at the time you need one. So you may have to just look for those facilities that have a bed that they call a Medicaid bed. You have to meet medical necessity. That is something that we as attorneys, elder law attorneys, can't help you with. The family has to really press that issue. They have to make sure the nursing home has done the medical necessity and sent it to the state, because you won't qualify for Medicaid if you don't meet medical necessity. Now, there are income requirements, but there are ways to get around the income requirements depending on where your income is, depending on whether you're single or married and things like that. So it's really important to sit down and figure out, you're going to have to provide lots of information. So save all those things, your Social Security statements every year, because those are going to come in real handy. Make sure you've got copies of your driver's license, Medicare cards, other insurance cards, supplements, Advantage, all those things. Always make sure you have a copy of all those. You want to always have a copy of your driver's license, because if you lose it, you can use that copy to get another one online, because you have to have that big long code at the bottom. So I recommend everybody copy their driver's license and put it somewhere safe. And then it comes down to assets. And so depending on where your assets are, depending on how they're titled, depends on, what kind of assets, makes all the difference when you're trying to figure out, can you qualify, can you not qualify? And for the most part, as long as you haven't done anything, no transfers, no money unaccounted for, we tell you to avoid pulling large sums of cash out of your checking account, because it's a red flag. Medicaid assumes that everything you do to qualify for Medicaid. So while the IRS says, hey, I can give each of my kids $16,000 a year, no problem. Medicaid assumes that you did that to qualify for Medicaid, even when you're healthy. So you have to be very careful about gifting if you don't have long-term care insurance, and Medicaid may be your payer for long-term care. So for the most time, we tell people, we can pretty much preserve most all of your assets if you're married. We can preserve about half if you're single. We can qualify as long as your income is below the cost of care. You should only transfer only when necessary and with the guidance of an attorney, because we want to make sure that what you do is correct and won't cause you a penalty, or if it does cause you a penalty, we know what to do to get you through the penalty period. And we want to make sure that there's income from what we call the community spouse. The community spouse is that person, is the spouse that's at home, that's healthy, that could live another 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Life expectancy is now up to 120. So if you thought that you were halfway, you still got a ways to go. And estate recovery can be avoided, okay? So you can, there are a lot of very legal things you can do to avoid estate recovery so that you don't have to pay back Medicaid, if in fact Medicaid is your payer for long-term care. So the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005 was implemented in October of 2006. And what it did was it imposed what we call a look-back period for Medicaid, a 5-year look-back period. For a long time, Texas ignored this. And because they were like, we don't care if the federal government gets their money back. They ignored it. And then they got threatened to lose their freeway money. They didn't get a handle on it. So then they put the rules in place. And so right now, when you talk about a 5-year look back, what it actually means is if you transfer assets, gift, any of those things within a 5-year 5-year time period, it automatically starts a penalty. So you want to be very careful about doing that. Like I said, if you don't have long-term care insurance or good long-term care insurance or plenty of money to private pay, don't gift. So always do it with the advice of an attorney. There are exemptions. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. Your home is an exemption, a car is exemption. Now, as of just like a few years ago, your IRAs are exempt as long as you're getting required minimum distributions. And so, and there's a few other things, your prepaid burials, as long as they're irrevocable. Medicaid doesn't want your plot in the cemetery, so that's exempt. All those things that nobody really wants except you. So there are exemptions. We know what they are. We know what to do to get you through whatever problems that you're going to have. The reason we talk about penalties is that, in spite of the fact that your Social Security may not have gone up very much, the penalty has gone up astronomically in the last few years. So you start thinking about the penalty being $237.93, which a lot of times in a lot of places, that's a daily rate for private pay. And so every $237.93 that you gift, it's one day you can't get Medicaid. Now, here's the kicker in all of this. Let's say you gifted 4 years ago, okay, and you applied for Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't assess the penalty until you apply for Medicaid. So the penalty moves forward. So you're getting penalized almost twice. In the old days, before they switched that, as long as you got past the penalty period from the time of the gift, you were still good to go. And then they came back and said, no, we're not going to penalize you until you apply. So easily a $10,000 gift is going to cost you 42 days that you're going to have to private pay. And then Mason Manor says that, that even if you have a penalty period, you still get some of the benefits of Medicaid. And so those really important to know as well. So we talk about income because, for the most part, there's not it doesn't seem like there's a lot of income that is required to qualify for Medicaid. And it's really kind of low in some aspects of it, depending on when you retired, if Social Security is your only retirement. But, for the person that's going into the nursing home, the income cap is $2,523. So, even if your amount is $2,530, it could still deny you for Medicaid. And that's the case, then we go back in and do what we call a qualified income trust or a Miller trust. And what that trust does, it's a very small document. And you basically are going to open a bank account. You're going to deposit all the income into the bank account. You're going to take out that $60 personal needs allowance, any insurance that needs to be paid that's not already coming out of your Social Security check. I'm talking about health insurance things, not anything else, not life insurance, none of those kinds of things. And the rest of it gets paid to the nursing home unless you have a spouse at home that needs some of that money. And so what the Miller Trust or that qualified income trust says, it says Medicaid, yes, I understand that my income is higher than the $2,523, but it's not enough to pay the whole amount. So I need you to let me qualify anyway. That's all it does, And of course, for legal purposes, it's 5 pages to say just that. So, but definitely we want to make sure that the spouse at home is taken care of. So their income can be up to the $3,435. Sorry, kids, I missed that one when I was updating the numbers. It is $3,435. And so just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that, so there wouldn't be a big surprise on that one. Now, for you people that are the spouses at home, if you can't live on $3,345, that could be a problem, because that's really not a whole lot of money either, if you think about it. So then when it comes to assets, there's a whole lot of things that are going to come into play. So the homestead is protected up to $585,000 in value, in equity. So, and really, if your house is more than $585,000, they don't care. If you owe a mortgage on it, they don't care. They will disqualify you. The prepaid irrevocable funerals, burial plots we talked about, the vehicle. If you live on a sailboat or an RV and that's your homestead, then you can exempt a car to go along with it. And so property essential to self-support. So maybe you own a business, things like that. So the business can continue to run to help pay for, things that you need. IRAs are not countable as long as you're taking required minimum distributions. And so, and then there's a rule when it comes to non-business stuff, but I'd like you in early so we can kind of make all those things just a little bit easier to get around when it comes to Medicaid. Countable are your checking and savings accounts, 401ks, money market, CDs, brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, anything that's not in a retirement account. Maybe you have mineral and royalty interest, or maybe you have extra houses, things like that. So there's all kinds of things, more vehicles. I have a lot of clients that have classic cars. They're countable, so you have to be very careful about what you do with those. And if you have your house in a revocable living trust, it makes it countable. We have to pull it out of the trust and then life estate deed it back to the trust in order to avoid any kind of penalties when it comes to the homestead. We tell clients all the time, if you have a house that's more than $585,000, we want you to put it into an irrevocable trust 5 years before you need it. Otherwise, they're going to require you to take equity in the house, get a home equity loan in order to pay your nursing home care. So always good to know. Here's some good Medicaid numbers for you. Single income cap is $2,523. Married income cap is basically double that, $5,046. If you're single, can't have more than $2,000 in non-exempt assets. And if you're married, $3,000 if you're both on Medicaid. So the minimum amount Medicaid says, the $27,480, they're like, well, you can have, that's the minimum. The maximum you can have is $137,400. The reality is with a lot of the tools that we have in our toolbox, that maximum protected resource amount could be a lot more. It could be into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on where things are. And then, of course, that Medicaid spousal monthly allowance for the spouse that's at home. So let's talk about Medicaid estate recovery. It's where the state of Texas recovery of funds spent on the Medicaid beneficiary. In spite of the fact that this is a fun picture, they don't want your house. If they spent $10,000 or more, you're going to get a bill. You're going to get a pretty detailed bill about it as well. And the only way they can recover is if your estate passes by will, or what we call intestate succession. So if you didn't have a will in your family files for heirship and administration, they can come in as a creditor. So they come in as a creditor. So we want to avoid, probate. Absolutely. So you got to keep the house out of the courthouse. We do that by life estate deeds. Do not do transfer on death deeds. I know that the Supreme Court and the legislators came out with those a few years ago. They're now trying to get people to not use them. If you have an actual transfer on death deed, creditors can get to your property for up to 2 years. So title companies are not going to issue title insurance until 2 years after that person's passed away. So we don't want to create problems or have you have problems trying to do the right thing by having our legislators who are not real smart some days and give you something that's not going to benefit you down the road. And so you want to be very careful. Also know that that Medicaid will not come back if there's a spouse, regardless. So if a spouse is alive, you have a child under the age of 21, any child that has a disability, it's an exemption. And so if you had an unmarried child that was living in the house for 2 years prior to you going into the nursing home, and that has kept you out of the nursing home, you have what we call a caregiver exemption. If the cost of selling the property is more than the property's worth, like you're not going to make any money off doing it. And so you have to, you have to actually ask for, hardship stuff, hardship request, so that if the estate property was a, family business or a farm or a ranch, and that's the main source of income, for the heirs, then you ask for, undue hardship, because it would prevent, heirs from being able to make a living. And so if the heirs would need financial help from the government, if the state filed a claim, if you would have to go on food stamps or SSI or things like that. And so So there's all kinds of things that that are there for exceptions, that for hardship and things like that. So that's important. Okay, so we've talked already about myths and facts. That's always good to know. We've talked about transfers. Don't do them. If you want to make a transfer, give the good elder law attorney and let's do it right. Because if good transfers done within, prior to 5 years, you can move a lot of non-exempt assets that you still have control over, but they're not going to be part of what Medicaid is going to be looking at down the road. So don't hesitate to reach out, because we have a lot of good things that we do to help you get past that. You need to understand the penalties. When you start thinking about, some nursing homes are $300, $350, $400 a day, depending on where you are at, what kind of care you need. Private pay facilities are a lot more than $237 and change. So a lot of people are paying $8,000 a month for private care facilities. So keep that in mind. Long-term care is expensive. And so you really want to do some good planning for that. We talked about the income requirements of, how little of income you have to have, and, in order to qualify. Talked about your assets, because that's important to know what's exempt and what's not exempt. And for a lot of times we can take some of those non-exempt assets and convert them to exempt assets by doing a variety of different things, depending on what kind of assets that you have. And so if you're not getting required minimum distributions, I can still protect your IRA. So those things are very important to know, that to make sure that you do reach out and get some good information. I can promise you that your friends, the beautician, people on the street are not going to be able to give you the things that you need. And the most important thing is staying out of probate court. Most people will tell you, probate in Texas is awesome. And it is. We have a great probate system. It's not too terribly difficult. It's designed for creditors to get paid. So for the most part, it's a lawsuit that you file against yourself with your own money for the benefit of creditors. That's what probate is. So can you imagine spending your money to make sure creditors get paid? So you might want to avoid that. And then estate recovery, and how you do that, staying out of the courthouse. Okay, hugely important. All right. So I was really worried I was gonna get through this too fast, or not fast enough. And when Catherine told me I had 45 minutes. So guys, if you have questions, please reach out to me so that I can answer them. And so Sheila, I'm not sure about if the copy of the slides are going to go with the presentation. So I'll just let you know that I'm not sure yet. Kelly, when you're asking about how much your services are to set this up, a lot's going to depend on what you need done. And so you can come in for a complimentary consultation. We'll sit down and walk through your assets, and what you need to do, but definitely getting things in place and getting them early. We want you to get things in place when you don't need anything. In 2019, we did Medicaid for a 39-year-old married with minor kids and a 41-year-old married minor kids. Ended up in long-term care. One was a heart attack, the other one was an automobile accident. It happens. You got to be prepared. You got to make sure that your family's protected. We tell everybody, if you have somebody you love, you plan. Couldn't be more important. And so it's just a range, Kelly, depending on what you need. It could be anywhere from $500 to $8,500. It just depends on what you need. And so just come in, don't hesitate to schedule, and we can definitely take care of that. Let's see. Teresa's asking, can you qualify for Medicaid if you receive VA, DID pension, and aid and attendance? When you qualify for Medicaid, you're going to lose the VA. You can only keep $90 of VA if you're on Medicaid. And the $90 is kind of the VA's personal needs allowance. So you could actually end up with $150 personal needs allowance, and that might actually pay for something, because trust me, $60 doesn't pay for much. Ladies, I don't know how much it costs you to get your hair done, but $60, won't get your hair done, or mani-pedis and all kinds of things. So you want to make sure that you put those things in place. But yes, you can have both. The federal government doesn't allow you to do what we commonly call double dipping. Let's see, ask if we're taking on new clients. We have satellite offices through Houston. So we're always taking new clients. I love what I do. I swore I wasn't going to be a really old attorney working, but when you have a job you love, it just, it's great. I absolutely enjoy what I do. We have locations in the Galleria out in what we call our Katy area, I-10 and the Beltway. And I grew up in Matagorda County, so I have an office in Bay City. I laugh and tell people my mother knows everybody in God down there. And so, into, all the people I went to school with and everything else. And so we're helping their parents and their grandparents, coming through. So really important. It gives me a chance to go home and see my mom, so everybody should spend good time with their families. Do annuities and IUL plans hinder getting Medicaid? It depends, Blanche. There are some annuities that will. And so a lot of times we have to bust those and put them into a Medicaid qualified annuity. So be very careful, guys, if you are buying annuities. I'm not a huge fan of annuities, but there are some good ones out there. What you look for are surrender charges. Okay, that is huge. The worst one I saw, and it was, God, I think the beginning of this year or end of last year, it had 20 years of surrender charges. If you wanted out of that annuity, the first year it was 20%, next year it was 19%. It was horrifying just to read the contract. And so it's really important to make sure that that you're aware, that you read the contracts. I will tell you that annuities make financial advisors a whole lot of money right off the bat. And so they just do. They're very well funded. Like I said, there are some good ones, but be very careful about what you buy. Fanny, I posted it in the chat for the website. Lillian, and so yes, Lillian, the Ladybird deed is also what we call a life estate deed, and yes, that's perfect and what you want for your homestead. We're getting a lot of pushback lately from, and y'all may be starting to get this because a lot of my clients that have signed Ladybird deeds back in the day are starting to get pushback from the appraisal district. So if you have any problems, go back to the attorney. And so because we draft Ladybird deeds just a little differently now than what we did in the past, so we may need to revoke and refile new ones. So don't hesitate to reach out to the attorney that did it, or if you need an attorney to look at it, let us know. And so Elaine, a person, yes, will have Medicare and Medicaid, because Medicare, if they leave the nursing home and they go back to the hospital, Medicare kicks in. If they're doing whatever they're doing in the nursing home, Medicaid kicks in. So you don't lose your Medicare. What we probably will do is get you switched to traditional Medicare at that time, because otherwise it'll make it a lot more difficult for you. But yes, you do have both, but not quite. Regina Non-Kingwood, our Galleria office is going to be the closest one. So Catherine, you asked for the 585,000. Where does that come from? Somebody arbitrarily came up with that number. It's just there. And it's real easy because home prices have jumped up higher. And so you want to be really careful. If you've got the time, move that house into what we call our fortress trust, that you can drop your house in the trust, no problem, get past that 5 years, and then it doesn't matter how high it goes. Medicaid can't touch it. So if you have a house that's getting close to that, think about putting it into an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust is not as scary. Everybody always thinks, oh, it's an irrevocable trust, but no, it's actually pretty easy to use irrevocable trust. It's actually pretty easy to get stuff out of them, and it's actually easy to terminate them, a lot easier than you think. And so if you needed to. Let's see. So I think Kelly, you said I think your wife maybe has been left a large sum of money from her sister's past. My sister and I want to open an account with that money to take care of my parents. It's if you, Kelly, the best thing to do is to set it up in a trust for the benefit of your parents and get past that 5-year look back period. And so if you're worried about the 5-year look back period, your worst case scenario, you may have to private pay for a short period of time. That's going to depend on how much money. Anything over 360,000, depending on income, is definitely worth putting into an irrevocable trust to protect it. And so, because it's also protected from any other creditors from the time you fund it, so the time you put something in it. So guys, if your parents are out there and they're driving and they're not driving so good, having their assets that are not exempt from creditors and things like that in an irrevocable trust are really good as well. So the trust can serve kind of multi-purposes. So don't think that it's just for one. We use it for a variety of different things. Della, I am very sorry. I just wanted to let you know. So you do need to probate the will. You have to do it within the 4-year time period. I would just do it and get it over with, because if you don't do it within that 4-year time period, the kids can contest you doing it after that and you're going to lose. So, I just wanted you to know that.
The lawyer that did his will is the one that's probating it, and it was probated right away.
Good.
And we're just waiting for the courts to get down to it. But yeah, he did not have a good relationship with his children. That was due to his first wife. So
Yeah.
they were more interested on when he died as to how he was doing. So that's why I chose the same one that did the will to probate it, because he talked to him, he verified he was of sound mind at the time. So hopefully there's not going to be any problems. And there is no bills, so there won't be any bills that would have to pay. The only thing we had was the house. So you think everything should go smoothly?
Everything should go smoothly. And so, and then once the probate is done and your attorney has you sign the executor deed from his estate to you, you need to, because you are now single and we want to protect the house, you now need to do a life estate deed for the home once you do that. Okay. And so, because when you're single, we never want you to go to probate. So you may never need long-term care, but it'll avoid the cost of probate as well. And so your kids won't have to pay that. It'll save them some money. Most they're going to have to do is file an affidavit of death when you're gone. And in my office, it costs you a couple $100. Super easy. And then the house belongs to the kids, so definitely do that. And so, Regina,
we didn't have any children.
I'm sorry?
We didn't have any children. So,
no, whoever you want the house to go to when you pass away, those are the beneficiaries you put in the life estate deed.
I already have that planned.
Good job. And so, Regina, the consultation is complimentary, and depending on what you're coming in for, in the email when you schedule as well, there'll be forms, the little buttons to push to grab your forms, and it'll tell you everything that we would need depending on what you're coming in for. Because we have a lot of different practice areas. And so once you schedule, you'll get the right form for what you need. Let's see. Lady Bird deed. Sheila, is that life estate deed? It's a deed that says the house is mine. I can do anything I want to, including revoke that life estate deed while during my lifetime. But if I own that house, the time that I pass away, here's the beneficiaries I want it to go to. And then once the death certificate comes in, we file an affidavit of death. That house belongs to the beneficiaries. You don't have probate. You don't have to deal with creditors, nothing. Now, if there's a creditor on the house, you do have to deal with them. So if there's a mortgage, you will have to do something. But it's a wonderful deed that does a whole lot of fun stuff. And so, Vijay, the surrender charges are not necessarily the only problem with annuities. It just depends on the type of annuity. For Medicaid purposes, it has to be irrevocable, and most annuities are not. So annuities can be a problem, but they can be overcome. So I don't want you to think they can. So if you have annuities that you love and you need long-term care, there are ways around them to take care of them so that you still get the benefit. Patricia asked if single premium life insurance policies count. Term policies do not count. Cash value in life insurance policies more than $1,500 are countable. So if you have a whole life policy that's been accumulating cash value all this time, we have to pull that cash value out and do something else with it. And so you can only have $1,500 in cash value for life insurance policies. Veronica, you asked, the converting whole life insurance to the one with long-term care options, is the cash value taxable before or after the conversation? I do not believe so. Check with your CPA, because a lot of people have large cash values in their life insurance policies, and that money is tax-free. So, you can definitely, because you've already paid taxes on it, you know what I mean? So having it in there, it's considered tax-free income, which is why a lot of people did irrevocable life insurance trust when our federal tax exemptions were not that high. But you can take that cash value in a life insurance policy. You can use it to pay for long-term care. You can take it and put it into a different product if you need to. Just really consult with somebody who really knows what they're doing when you start doing those sort of things. Patricia, I think I answered that question about the life insurance. Daryl, we don't have an office there. There are some good attorneys. If you need Medicaid, I can refer you to. If you need estate planning, you can still use us, because I've got clients all over the state of Texas. We have COVID has allowed us to really implement some really cool procedures that allow us to, my father's clients out in El Paso. And so definitely, you being in Austin isn't a hindrance, but if you want someone absolutely in office right there, I can definitely refer you. Just send me an email to kim@hegwoodlaw.com, and I'll be more than happy to give you some names of people if you need somebody in person. So Kelly, you're asking if you're seeing if parents can qualify for MCD2. Most of the time, yes, depending on who, you just have to schedule for it. Regina, we're at the gallery office by appointment only. So you just schedule the appointment in the gallery office, and then somebody will meet you there. All right, guys, I think I've ran through all the questions. I want you to take advantage of this. So if you have any more, please drop them into the chat. So we definitely want you to, ask whatever questions that you have.
Kim, this has been great as always. We really appreciate you being here.
Not a problem. And I'm sorry I can't stay, but I've got a client in the hospital I've got to go take care of. So I just want to thank you, Catherine, for having me, and thank you, all of y'all, for being part of the presentation. I hope it was useful, and y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kim. You too.